I know I don't suck because Will Lee and Christian McBride told me so. So,
that's all I would need.
Yeah.
It is such a pleasure today to get to hang out and talk with a guy who I've been a fan of for a really long time. Just dig the way he plays, just his musicianship, his ability behind a drum kit, and also just his ability as an educator. I have so much respect for him as a teacher, and just can't wait to dig in and talk all about that stuff. And the other piece of it is that my son Skylar was fortunate enough to get to study with him privately at LSU for about a semester, and that was a great experience for him. So all of that said, it's a pleasure to have Stanton Moore on the podcast. How are you, Stanton?
Yes, indeed. It's great to see you, Brad. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are things in New Orleans?
Well, very good. And, we were just catching up a little bit, and I just got through New Orleans Jazz Fest, which is one of my most joyous times in New Orleans, but it's also one of my most all-consuming times as well. And the lead into it is busy, super, super busy. And we've got Mardi Gras right before it. But then it's not like when I get done with Jazz Fest, then somebody, picks me up and drives me to the airport to go to vacation. I still have stuff going on. So I went straight from Jazz Fest to some other fly out gigs. And luckily Saturday, my wife and I are going on vacation for 2 weeks. We're going to Jamaica for 2 weeks. So,
that is a well-deserved time to go and rest and get refreshed from the busy schedule.
So we look forward to it every year. We try to do it in June every year.
Oh, that's fantastic. How many times did you play at Jazz Fest?
That's a great question. And I thought I was going in with about 22, but towards the second weekend, I kept getting asked to come do some special appearances. So Grace Potter had me come to the Orpheum Theater. Anders Osborne had me come, special guest at the Civic Theater. I was a special guest with Preservation Hall for their Midnight Preserves. So it wound up being 25 appearances in 12 days.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, just over 2 a day.
Man, that's crazy. And then, like you were saying, leading up to that is Mardi Gras and that season of playing. And I can't imagine how many gigs you played in that span of time. Yeah,
well, Mardi Gras is actually now not too overly busy gig-wise, because what we do now is we used to play the Saturday before Mardi Gras, and then I would play the Sunday before with Anders Osborne at Tipitina's with George Porter Jr. on bass and all these other great musicians. And then we would play 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. the Monday night before. So that was pretty chock full. But we had Super Bowl Sunday this year on that Sunday before. So we decided to not do a gig that night. And then also Galactic is now doing the what we call Mardi Gras first Saturday, and then the Saturday right before. So we spread it out over 2 weeks. And we will be doing the Anders Mardi Gras show again. But just all the things added up to this year, it was a very manageable Mardi Gras. And how much fun is that to go play your favorite club, which is, just a mile down the road from me on both Saturdays leading into Mardi Gras. So, but it's still crazy busy because my wife absolutely loves Mardi Gras and it's her favorite thing in the world. So she's got me running around like crazy.
I live in St. Louis now, grew up in Atlanta, lived in St. Louis, but in the middle of that, we lived 2 years in Lafayette. So I had not experienced Mardi Gras until we lived there, and it is just something to behold. And
and I haven't gotten a chance to check out the Lafayette Mardi Gras, but I know that it is its own unique thing. And my wife is from Lafayette. So,
Oh, okay, cool. All right.
yep.
Yeah.
And her mom is from Lafayette. So that side of my family is very appreciative of Lafayette. But I haven't gotten a chance to check out the Mardi Gras side of it. But I hear that it's really, really, really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I just Louisiana in general is just that experience is something I will hold on to forever. Just the people. I mean, you know that I mean, it's been your life. It's just the people. It's the nicest people I've ever met. Just the best food, the best music. The entire thing is it's an experience like that anyone needs to check out if they haven't done it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the way that I like to, kind of explain it to people who may not have experienced it yet, it's kind of like a citywide block party. And just like any block party, you want to find the people that you want to hang with, right? So
Right.
you might have this group over here that you want to talk to, and there might be this lovely group over here, but maybe they're teenagers and you want to say hi, but you don't want to necessarily spend all evening locked in discussion there. You want to go over here and find your people. So, of course, there are young college kids who are having a blast and they might be, over celebrating. And then, literally steps away, you've got your people who are, enjoying in the things that you want to enjoy in. And so it's really like a citywide block party. And if you seek what you're looking for and know where to go, you're going to have an absolute blast.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you can find anyone that parties within your speed limit there, right? And it's depending on how high or low you want to go with that, there's going to be someone doing it.
Exactly. And I've got friends who are completely sober now, and then they love to costume. So
right.
They, there's the whole spectrum. And even if you don't like to costume and you don't like to partake, there's still so much people watching. It's just it's hard to not find something that you're going to be interested in.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I wanted to ask about your early years. What part of Louisiana did you grow up in?
Yeah, I grew up in the suburbs in Metairie, which is, not too far from the airport. And I grew up, when I was 6 months old. We moved into that house that my parents lived in for 50 years. So that's the only house I ever knew. So I was too young to remember anything before that. So we grew up in, one house in Metairie, and then I started going to Brother Martin High School, which is in Gentilly in Orleans Parish. I started going there when I was 16, 17, and maybe younger than that. And so as a teenager, started spending time in the city, and started studying with Marty Hurley at Brother Martin. He was a great rudimental instructor, great teacher. And I really was fortunate to get a good foundation from him. And then when I was about 16, 17, I started hanging out with and studying from Marty Hurley. And then at 17 years old, started hanging out with Russell Baptiste. So I really had incredible mentors and teachers coming up. Also, took some lessons with Ray Franson, studied some timpani and classical percussion with Jim Atwood when I was at Loyola. So I just had a lot of access to a lot of really great tutelage coming up.
Yeah, Marty Hurley. So I started out as a percussionist and moved to bass guitar at some point. Realized I could make a lot of money playing bass and singing, so was doing that. But when I was a teenager, I played a lot of Marty's snare drum solos.
Oh, cool!
And the guy, just what a legend in the rudimental snare drum world.
Yeah, I mean, just a legend, and then also in his teaching, even if you didn't study with him privately, there were so many people who worked with him on either Phantom Regiment or Brother Martin drum lines. And just he instilled a work ethic and a willingness to pursue excellence that just really kind of impacted everybody that he, had contact with. And so you couldn't help but be really positively impacted by him, whether or not you got really close personal tutelage from him, or if you just happen to be on his line, he imparted, the notions of discipline and hard work and excelling for or pursuing excellence as a group, as a team. And that really, makes a lot of difference in your life,
Yeah. He was the band director at the school. So
he was the assistant band director when I started. And then Arthur Hardy, who was the band director, he left halfway through my time there so he could more focus on his Mardi Gras guide. So he is Arthur Hardy, Mr. Mardi Gras. And halfway through my time there, he started focusing full-time on his Mardi Gras guide. And then Mr. Hurley became the primary band director.
One of the things I've noticed is when percussionists are band directors, I always find that they have a successful program, because I think that a lot of wind players that start out, I think that they're, and I don't want to be too general about it, but I think that a lot of wind players, when they're in middle school and high school, there's a lot of rhythmic deficiency there, and they focus so much on the melodic part of their instrument that the rhythm kind of takes a backseat.
Right.
And I found that when a percussionist is leading the band, they focus a lot on that rhythmic piece, and I find that the program is more successful as a result of it.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a band that is strong rhythmically, that's, super important. I mean, and that's going to impact people, If a couple kids are playing out of tune or playing a couple wrong notes, that'll get noticed, but not as much as if nobody's playing in time together.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, man, that's exactly right. That's it. And you mentioned playing timpani as well at Loyola, and I was speaking with someone else on here about the importance of timpani. Did you find that studying timpani had a lot of benefit for your drum set playing? Just that touch of how to strike the drum?
Yeah, 1,000,000%. Absolutely. I mean, I think that really helped me, definitely got me starting thinking about touch, and definitely helped me develop a touch that was more pulling sound out of the instrument instead of trying to pile drive through the heads or the cymbals. I was really aware of trying to draw sound out of the heads, out of the drums, out of the cymbals. And, studying with Jim Atwood, who was with the Louisiana Philharmonic for, 30 years, over that, longer than that. So, he became a really good friend, and I really dig Jim, and I really, appreciate everything that I got from him, because he definitely helped me think about touch.
Yeah. Yeah, that was it for me too. I played a lot of timpani early on, and just found that understanding that we focus so much on that moment where the stick or the mallet touches the head, but there's so much more going on in that motion around it that's just as important, that kind of gets overlooked at times.
Oh yeah, definitely. And once you start becoming aware of sound and the tone and the sound that you're getting out of the instrument, that's a game changer, Yeah. So timpani really had me start thinking about that. And, I would be in these lessons with Jim where it might be a 45-minute lesson, and it's 45 minutes of him listening to me try to get one stroke that sounded good, So I'd be sitting there playing the timpani, and it'd be like, boom, that's not it. Boom, that's not it. Boom, that's not it. And I say, I'd get frustrated and hand him the mallets and be like, okay, well, show me. And it'd be like, whoa.
Right, yeah.
And I'd be like, oh man, give me those mallets, and I'd try it again. Bob. So, he really got me into focusing on how to get a better sound when I was playing. And I applied that to the drum set.
Yeah. Skylar and I both studied with a guy named Jack Bell in Atlanta, who was in the Atlanta Symphony. And he was the same way, in that he probably spent more time with you in a lesson talking about your sound, the production that you get from the instrument, than anything else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because it's so important, And it's like a lot of younger players don't always think of this, and I didn't when I was younger. But one of my instructors, who I get to play with a lot now, which is incredible, but the great Tony DeGrati on saxophone, and he said, this is when I was in school there, and he said, the first thing that you notice about somebody, about a musician, about a player is their sound. And at the time I was like, no, man, you'll notice like their groove or their feel. Or it's like, no, the first note that they play, you notice their sound, especially if it's an instrument like saxophone or, any kind of instrument that has tone. And, the first note that comes out of a saxophone, you can tell whether that guy can play or not,
That's it.
If it comes out squeak, but when Tony plays, it's like, he's got this beautiful tone on sax. It's just gorgeous. So now I get to play with him sometimes in the Columns Hotel, which is a beautiful reverberant room. Sometimes at the Bayou Bar. But, all those times when I'm playing with him, there's no microphone on him. So you're just hearing the sax in the room, in those two rooms. And I play with him sometimes at Snug Harbor too, and there's a microphone there. But Bayou Bar and Columns Hotel, no mic. And the way that he plays in the room, it's just like, it's like playing, with a master. And it's like, holding the finest glass of wine you could possibly imagine. It's like, oh my God, this is fantastic. And it takes a while to appreciate that. You don't always appreciate that when you're younger. But now that I'm older, and it's hilarious, it's like we'll come out of the gate playing, 3 or 4 pretty high energy tunes, and the crowd is like, oh yeah, that's great. And then we'll play something like Isfahan, which is, Billy Strayhorn. Like, he likes to do it not quite as a ballad, but like very slow swinging. And just the tone. And he plays this cadenza at the end. And then I might play like some mallets on a cymbal at the very end of his cadenza. But his cadenza gets like a standing ovation. And people are like, oh my God, because his tone is so incredible. It's like, oh my God, it's amazing, amazing. And it's the power of tone and sound can move people, especially when you got an audience of people who really appreciate that, and you can really hear it, not coming through a PA, but you hear a guy like that who's been playing saxophone for 60 years and he plays in the room. There's nothing between you and his sound. It's moving, man. It's powerful.
Man, yeah, and that's it. And I don't want to sound like an old fart when I say this, but we live in this Instagram, TikTok world now where it's let me show you how much I can do in the shortest amount of time.
Right.
And I hope that skill isn't lost on future generations, that sound is key and chops are not as important. The chops are important, don't get me wrong, but they're not the be all end all of being a musician.
Right, exactly. And what's interesting, man, is like we went through all of this that we just went through. We went through, a global pandemic and where nobody could earn. And, everybody's worried about AI and everybody's worried about, social media and Instagram and TikTok. Who's not worried about that and who's still getting paid? Musicians who have great sound, who know a lot of songs and can play with anybody. You know what I'm saying? Those people, because you can't, as of right now, you can't replace the live music experience. And the guys who are really good at playing live are still working a lot.
They're still working. Yeah,
right. They ain't worried about AI. They ain't worried about TikTok. Like, Tony DeGrati he retired from teaching at Loyola, and now he's playing more gigs than he wants to.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
And Steve Mazikowski, too. He just retired from UNO. But both of those guys, now they're shedding and playing a lot more gigs now that they're retired from teaching. And they sound better than ever, and they're playing all the time, and they're not worried.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Yeah, no, you're right. And, tone is key. And I guess I hope that the next generation is paying close attention to that and that the torch is going to be passed pretty well,
Yeah. Well, I hope so. And then, as they get older and they realize that, there's only so many bills you can pay with TikTok or Instagram. And then if you can really play live with other musicians, that is almost, I don't want to jinx it, but it's proven time and time again, it's almost recession proof.
Yeah.
you know, like after Katrina, as soon as we could, guess who was working all the time? Live musicians. After COVID, as soon as we could, guess who's working all the time? Great live musicians. As you go into recessions, people still want to forget their troubles and they go out and they listen to live musicians. I've seen it. I've been through all this stuff, been through all the recessions, you know, lately we all get worried, but then it works out, you know? And so I can't impart enough. It's like, kids, don't forget to learn how to play your instruments.
That's it. That's it.
I mean, if you want to get paid.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. If you want to, if you want to sit at your house and play by yourself, that's one thing. But yeah, there's no benefit, there's no greater benefit than getting to play music with other people.
Yeah.
To other people. Right?
Oh, it's fantastic. And I'm doing more and more of it now. Galactic coming out of the pandemic, we decided to do less long 3-week bus tours. So we're doing more fly out for the weekend stuff and more multiple night stuff, which after about a year of that, and then my daughter also went to college at the same time. So after about a year of that, like 2, 3, sometimes 4 nights a week, my wife and I would like walk out of the house and say, okay, you want to go left down Magazine Street or right down Magazine Street? You want to go eat? You want to maybe get a beverage first? What do we want to do? So like we call them random date nights, right? And so then after a while of that, and we still do that, I love that. But I started realizing, wow, I've gotten to settle into being home. I've gotten to like, kind of rejuvenate, regenerate. Now I really want to play. So what do I want to do? I want to set up my own situations. So, I do my piano trio with David Torkanowski and James Singleton on Mondays at the Columns. And now, starting in March, we started doing, me and Joe Ashlar do the Maple Leaf, and I wanted to do it early, 6 to 9. And we get 3 of the best guitar players in town. We get either Danny Abel, Chris Atkins, who plays with George Porter Jr., or Ari Title, who's one of the best guitar players in town. So all 3 of those guys are some of the best. So every week it's a little different, and we get different horn players. Taku Hirano has been coming and sitting in on percussion, so it's always a little different. And then on Tuesdays, I'll either play at the Bayou Bar, and that's sometimes with, it's always with Peter Harris on bass because it's his gig. Sometimes that's with Steve Mazikowski and Tony DeGrati. So on Mondays, I get to play with Tork and Singleton. That's half of Astral Project. On Tuesdays, I get to play once or twice a month at the Bayou Bar with Mazikowski and Tony DeGrati. That's the other half of Astral Project. And then on Wednesdays, get to play with Joe Ashlar, who's one of the baddest organ players around, and 3 of the best guitar players. So my point is like I'm getting to play with some of the best players in town on a regular basis. And the more I play with great musicians, the more I feel like I'm growing and the more I enjoy it. And it's awesome. And then I fly out on weekends to go play with Galactic or Dragon Smoke or Crasso Moore Project or, whatever I might get hired to do. So right now, believe it or not, at 51 years old, I feel like I finally have gotten to a place where I've got a really enjoyable balance that I'm just loving.
Well, and that's fantastic, first of all. And I've heard that one of the good things that came out of the pandemic for musicians is that it kind of gave everyone the opportunity to kind of press reset on some things. And I think that being one of them, of just kind of prioritizing not being gone all the time. It's so hard and I'm with you. I worked full time. I've had a full-time gig, but also was basically playing full time. And I just felt like I was a passenger in my life. And I felt like I was missing everything all the time with my kids. And I'm just glad that you're getting to do that while still feeling like you're growing as a player at the same time. What a cool thing you're getting to do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I love it. And as you were saying, through COVID, I think we all got a chance to really reflect and, really I talked a lot with my wife and with my closest friends. And, I'll be very open about it because people were open about it with me. It gave me the courage to start therapy. And so I like being open with it so that if anybody hears that that it has helped me immensely, and it gives them the courage to do it. It has improved my life immensely. And so I like being very open about it, because some of my older, musicians that I look up to, and I heard that they were in therapy, and I talked to them about it, and they said, man, I can't recommend it highly enough. So then I started in February of 2020, right before the pandemic. So that really, really helped me. But that combined with talking to my wife, with a bunch of my friends, really helped me realize what I had been doing that I don't want to do anymore, and what I want to have more of in my life. Like I would have never thought before COVID to like have a Monday night weekly, a Tuesday night, different Tuesday night weeklies. Cause sometimes I'll play at Snug with Torque and Singleton like once a month. And I just did that Tuesday night. And then having this new weekly at the Maple Leaf, I would have never thought that, because I would have thought, I got to keep up these appearances of being like some well-known musician. It's like, I started to reevaluate, and I realized that, quote, fame or recognition or notoriety are not as important to me as I thought they were. They're still important, but you know what's more important? Getting to play great music with great musicians. And if that means going to play at the Maple Leaf and going to play at the Columns. And when my wife was like, oh man, I just don't know if anybody's going to show up at the Columns. And she was right. Like for the first 2 weeks, like 7 people each time. And then by week 3, there was like 25 people. By, week 4, 40. And now it sells out at 50 people. That's all you can fit. It's like a living room type of vibe. And you can order food and great cocktails. So I just absolutely love this vibe. But I had to create it, right? They weren't doing music in there on a regular basis. And then Maple Leaf, they thought I was nuts wanting to play 6 o'clock. Now they let me try it. And then by week 3, we had a really good audience, and now they're letting me do it. And they're like, man, because the reason I wanted to try that is because I listened to people. People, tell me, oh man, we love these earlier gigs. And would you do more of these earlier gigs? And so, the Columns showed me that 6:30 people were showing up, because the Columns had to be done by 9, because sometimes they have hotel guests. Mm-hmm. So I was like, well, shoot, we'll start at 6:30, and then it's working. And so now I'm doing 6 o'clock at the Maple Leaf, and people are showing up, and like, oh my goodness, I love this. I can come straight from work. I can like watch your first set, maybe go get a bite to eat. There's so many restaurants. You come check the rest of it out, go home, and I'm in bed by 9:30.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's it.
But my point of saying all that is that, people ask me sometimes, like, how do you develop things, or, how do you make progress? And sometimes you just got to create your own situation. You've got to create your own scene. I don't sit around and wait for the phone to ring, Galactic bought our parents' 1978 van, and we started calling clubs ourselves, and we made our own record, and then we started booking gigs ourselves. And then that brought us to the attention of a booking agent. But, we have created our own things. And now by doing all that, now I occasionally get called to play with guys like Tony DeGrati and Steve Mazikowski. That's half of Astral Project. Like I said, that's great. And now I'm getting calls. I've been getting calls to play with either George Porter Jr. or Leo Nocentelli. But now I've gotten called to play with both of them together, right? Gio Leo plus Ivan Neville with me on drums, headlining New Orleans Funk Fest October 19th. That's half of the meters. So it's like, right. But if I would have sat there and waited for that phone call, it would have never happened. It's because I went and made a name for myself, showed that I can play, showed that I know the tunes, showed that I'm reliable, right? And I'm not too difficult. Hopefully I'm easy to get along with. And then I get calls. I start getting calls like that, right? Yeah. But I didn't get a call to like that to play with Gio Leo because I've been practicing in my bedroom, right? You've got to make your own situations. And I knew that, like, getting in our parents' 1978 van and going on those first tours, I knew there was not going to be anybody there. But I was in it for the long haul. And by year 4, we went from playing in front of 10 people to 50 people. By year 4, we were headlining the Warfield, 2,500 people in San Francisco, right? And so now I've been taking those risks here in town. Like, I'll play in front of 0 people at the 7 people at the Columns until it picks up steam, and now it's sold out almost everywhere. And it's one of my favorite things in the world. And so
it has to be such a rewarding feeling too, to feel that grow organically, right?
Incredible. But this is the thing. You also have to be humble. Like,
yeah,
I'm trying to be an eternal student and be humble. And I was like, you know what? There might be very few people at the Maple Leaf the first couple of times, but I don't care. I want to play. I'm going to build it. I'm not too proud to play in front of a small crowd, knowing that big picture. I'm trying to grow this thing and make it regular. Now it's growing. And, we're going to take July and August off and come back in September, but we're going to grow it. And it's incredible because I get to play all these organ trio. I have 3 organ trio records I did. We get to play tunes off that, tunes off Corrosion of Moore project, tunes that all the other guys have written that are, the guys that we're playing with. But, the thing that I'm trying to impart to anybody who might be listening to this is sometimes you have to create your own situations, and don't be afraid if there's nobody there the first several times. That's not a failure. You're building it. Don't be afraid to build it. Don't be afraid to invest in yourself and take a chance on yourself.
Yeah. And let me also say that, and you don't need for me to say, hey, great job doing therapy, man. You don't need to hear that from me. But I want to say, I commend you for being vulnerable to say, hey, this is what I did. It helped me. As someone who has done therapy both individually and also with my wife, I can tell you, I recommend it to everyone. It's going to just make you a better human being to yourself and to everyone around you if you
Absolutely.
do it.
Yeah, and and some people have asked me, like, well, what has helped? Like, what do you work on? Well, for one thing, like, I've learned what my values are, like what I value and hold dearest, right? Which is one of those things is the pursuit of excellence, right? At least trying for excellence. And when I'm in situations where I feel like the people I'm involved with are not, we don't hold the same values, then that can trigger me. And then I can become less than enjoyable to be around. And so, but now I can understand that, and I can understand that not everybody is going to value that. And so I understand, maybe I want to limit how much I expose myself or how much time I put myself in those kinds of situations. And then when I do feel myself start to get frustrated and flustered, so my therapist calls that frustrated. When I start to feel frustrated, I know how to mitigate that. I know why I'm getting that way. And I also know that I need to maybe either distance myself or limit my exposure to that. And then what I do is then I go and practice or shed or write a lesson or do something productive that makes me feel like I'm growing. And then I can't change other people. I can't make them try harder, or I can't make them want something that I want if they don't want it. So I know what I've got to do to go handle this in a healthy way, right?
Yeah,
that's taken me 4 years to be able to communicate it to other people, and it'll help you figure that out for yourself. And so what that does is that brings the whole, think of it like, you are a barrel. And, if you are filled up with things that are frustrating you all the time, then something frustrates you, you're going to overflow. Your barrel is going to overflow. And then guess what that means? That means that you are less than enjoyable to your wife or one of your children. And that's not cool. That we don't want to be that kind of person. So, being in therapy, working on understanding what might trigger me, what might upset me, what might frustrate me, working on that helps me lower the level of what's in the barrel, helps me empty the barrel so that if something starts to frustrate me, I'm not overflowing.
Yeah.
I know how to scoop out and keep it balanced, right? And you're going to get frustrated. You're going to get frustrated, but you don't want that to affect your relationships, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very long process, but it's one worth going through if you want to be a better person around your family and around your bandmates.
Yeah.
And especially if you get hired by somebody and then you haven't worked with them before, the last thing you want to do is like be at sound check, something frustrates you and you fly off the handle.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want that. So it's just helpful in all situations that you might find yourself in, you know, and then for everybody's going to be different. You know, somebody might have different issues that they need to deal with, but it helps you figure out how to handle your issues.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and it's hard to be, you know, as you're talking about that, of being frustrated, which I'm going to absolutely take that with me and use that all the time. That's fantastic.
That's a good one.
It's a good one. It's hard to be creative on the bandstand when you're kind of getting in your own way with some of that stuff too.
It is. You know? It is. Yeah. It very much is. And the more you mitigate stress and anxiety and learn how to keep it in check and mitigate your frustrations, then the more you can get on stage, and if something's aggravating you, if the snare mic falls onto the snare for the 5th time, that might send me through the roof if I'm not mitigating that barrel. So if the barrel is mitigated and I'm totally in a great mood and everything's cool, and then that snare mic falls on the snare for the 5th time, it's not going to frustrate me as much. And then I'm not going to get distracted and miss a big fill into a chorus. Right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. And I'll just quickly share with you, but the biggest epiphany I had during therapy was for me, I was just overscheduling myself. So when you were talking about your life, you know, kind of stepping back on that for me, I had this realization that everything I said yes to, I was saying no to something else.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge.
And then I had to prioritize, which thing do I really want to say yes to?
Exactly.
And it just changed the game for me.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you know, you hit the nail on the head. And then also for me, I had to realize that growing up, either I'm born or I some kind of way took it on, but I became a people pleaser. And so I would say yes to everything because I didn't want to say no and disappoint somebody or let somebody down. But then I read a book that was really, really helpful called Essentialism. And I'm gonna have to look and see if it's on my shelf and see who wrote it. But it's called Essentialism. And the subtitle should be the learning the art of saying no gracefully.
I need to read this.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And it really helped me a lot. And then two, you know, not only saying no allows you to say yes to something else, but you can say no to something that you don't think is the right fit and not have anything to necessarily say yes to. Just leave yourself open. And then you're open if something comes up that you do want to say yes to.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And guess what? If you say no to something and you find yourself with some extra time, take a walk. Take a walk with your wife. Read a book.
Yeah.
You know, do something, meditate. Do something that's going to be helpful and healthy for you. But this whole idea of, you know, hustle culture, and you've got to be busy from the second you wake up until, you know, you go to bed at night. It's not healthy. And the more and more studies are showing it's counterproductive.
Yeah. That like multitasking is a myth. And, you know, you're right. We just schedule our lives for every second of the day. And it's just not the way to live, man.
No. And you know what I do? Like when I'm sitting here, and these are helpful tools that I've learned. So when I'm sitting here in my office and it's time for me to catch up on email, I set my timer for 30 minutes. Because guess what happens at 45 minutes? I start falling asleep and I keep trying and it takes me 10 minutes to get through one email. So that's diminishing returns. So I set the alarm for 30 minutes and then I'll go practice or I'll write. Then I'll come back and I'll do another 30-minute session. And guess what happens? If I get sleepy, I go take a nap.
What a concept.
Yeah, but I do because then I wake up from that feeling refreshed and, you know, but this is what works for me. Some people are going to be listening to this and be like, oh my God, he's way lazier than I thought. It's like, no, I'm not. I just listen to my body. It's like, you know, and then I reset, take a little nap, and then I come back and keep plowing through, you know?
Yeah.
With all the stuff that I've got to do in a day, you know, answering email, getting on conference calls for, you know, with management with Galactic, management with Stanton Moore, you know, staff meetings at Tipitinas, you know, conference calls about tips, conference calls about, all this other stuff. There's a lot to do in a day. And that's not even talking about practicing or writing new lessons for my drum academy, which I love doing, right? All those things, and like taking walks in the morning with my wife, those things I love to do. But there's just so much to do in a day. And if I get sleepy, I'm like, you know what? I want to enjoy this. I don't want it to be miserable. So I'm going to go take a nap.
Yeah, that's it.
And then continue doing the stuff I got to do.
That's it. Have you noticed in this period of your life where you've been focusing a lot of attention on self-improvement and what your wellness, and have you noticed a shift in the way you play? Or the way you are on the bandstand? Has it changed the sound of your drumming or your approach to the instrument?
I think so. I mean, for me, yes. And hopefully it's noticeable to other people. And so, I used to think about, okay, like play like this is your last gig that anybody will ever hear you play. Play like this is the only gig that anybody will ever hear you play. This is being filmed, it's being recorded, and 20 years from now, this is the only thing that will remain, and this is the only thing that anybody will have to reference your life's work, right? Guess what? That puts a lot of pressure on yourself.
Yeah.
So then I was like, you know what? Let me play like it's my birthday, right? And then I hired the best band in the world to play my wedding, right? And it was David Torkanowski on keys, James Singleton on bass, my good friend Skerik on saxophone, and Shannon Powell on drums. It was incredible. And then I sat in and I had the best time. I just played with all this joy in my heart. All my favorite people were there dancing, and it was just so fun. So then I was like, oh my God, play like it's my wedding. Play like it's my wedding day. Right? And then this year, it was Mardi Gras Day, and my wife and I were on Frenchman Street, and I got called up to sit in with the New Orleans Klezmer All-Stars, and I played, and I just had the absolute best time. And then I went over and went to go see who was playing at Royal Frenchman, and it was one of my best friends sitting in, Pedro Segundo, great percussionist, great drummer, and he played percussion with Galactic at the fairground. And so Pedro was playing with Trumpet Mafia on Mardi Gras Day. And so he was like, oh, come sit in. So I went up there and sat in on that and had the most absolute best time. And it was outside, daylight. Everybody was dancing, having a great time. So then I was like, oh, play like it's Mardi Gras Day, right? Play with all the joy in your heart. So I try to play like it's some combination of my birthday, my wedding, or Mardi Gras Day, right? And then I also recently read this quote from Pat Metheny where he was like, yeah, when I'm playing, I try to imagine that I am not playing, I am listening. And I am outside of myself and I'm listening to the music that is going on. And the guitar player is one of my favorite guitar players. And what do I want to hear that guitar player play? And to me, I was like, that is profound. Because I've been trying to get outside of myself and listen from outside of myself. But listening from outside of myself, like I am one of my favorite drummers, but I want to hear that drummer play. What would I want to hear that drummer play that would fill me with joy right now, right? So
beautiful.
Yeah. But getting to that point, and so then what I try to do when I'm playing is I try to feel and internalize that I am a part of the ensemble. So the ensemble is an organism, and I am just a part that is woven into that organism. And I don't think about my ego. I don't think about, oh, I got to try to fit in that lick that I've been practicing. Oh, so-and-so just showed up. I better play something fancy so they think I can play, or any of that shit. What I try to focus on now is playing like I'm listening. I'm not the drummer, but I'm listening to one of my favorite drummers. And what would I want to hear this ensemble sound like? Not just the drums. What would I want to hear this whole ensemble sound like from outside? And I'm trying to embody joy, whether that's because I'm playing on my birthday, my wedding, or Mardi Gras Day. So that's what I try. That's the head space and the soul space that I try to get into these days. And you can't do that when you're frustrated, and you can't do that when you're tired or angry or, overworked, right? So, you know what my favorite thing to do before a gig is?
What's that?
Take a nap. I'm serious. When I'm on the road, we play sound check. Then I try to eat as quick as soon after sound check as I can, and then I go shut it off. I just even if I'm just laying in my bunk for a while with no input coming in and not having to put out any output, but just having that downtime, just shutting down and quieting my mind. And then usually I do fall asleep and I take a nap, and then I wake up and I'll eat 3 chocolate covered espresso beans, and I make a shot of espresso. We tour with an espresso machine.
Oh, nice.
But now that we're doing more multiple night stuff and staying in hotels, I try to take a nap at the hotel before I go. And usually our hotels are close enough walking distance to the gig. So I'll take a nap, wake up, freshen up, go over, try to catch the last few minutes of the opening band, and then, get a little coffee in me and play the gig. But I like to be fresh on the gig, not exhausted, not overwhelmed, not aggravated, frustrated, or any of those things.
That's a great idea, just to kind of have a mental reset and just kind of remove everything from your mind. Because as you're saying this, I'm just thinking, and whether you're a professional musician or you work in an office or you're a manager or whatever, it's just amazing how much pressure we put on ourselves to execute and deliver when no one else may be even noticing that. And it's just all self-inflicted pressure that is not even warranted.
Right, exactly. And I feel like I'm one of the kings of that. And I've been trying to let go of that, And then too, as I'm 51 now. So as I get older and my wife and I are doing great. We live in a neighborhood that we love, in a house that we love. And my daughter is halfway through college and she's doing great. And, all of these things get you to a point where it's okay, I'm doing all right. I'm in a good space in life,
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of time to get to that.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
So now, I love to work, but I also want to be conscious to not overwork, which I was, a king of doing for a long time.
Yeah, I'm there with you. Well, I just applaud your journey and your just sharing it with people, because I know it will connect with people that are on the same path as you, and I will tell you that, and I'd been a fan of your playing for a long time, but Skylar and I were in Baton Rouge when he was touring at LSU, and we happened to be there when you were doing a master class.
Right, I remember that.
Yeah. And I took so much away. I mean, I was happy that he got to hear it, but I've took so much from that, in that what you were instilling in this next generation of players. Because, I mean, how many drum clinics have we gone to and listened to someone play a solo and then talk about how they play the clave on their left foot or this and that? You focus so much about, I guess, the soft skills of being a musician and what you can do to get employed, and to stay employed. And I don't think enough focus is given to that. And man, I took so much away from that. He's in a market, he's doing something that more people need to be talking about. So I really dig that, man.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate that. And that means a lot, because, that's what I'm trying to do, is give people information or ideas that they can use in real life,
Yeah.
and use in their own way in the real world.
Yeah. Well, I just remember you were talking about playing a shuffle. I think the entire the master class that day was about a shuffle, and you were talking about, this is how I play it, but this is the volume that I would probably play it if I was playing a wedding gig, and this is what you need to know how to be able to do. And I don't feel like there's enough conversation about that, about what it's like out there in the trenches, being a working drummer, having to play quietly for the wedding planner or whatever, there's a lot involved in that.
Yeah. Yeah, there is. And I've been working on playing quieter in the last several years. And I feel like I've gotten more comfortable doing that. And the more that I do and the more comfortable I get, the more confident and comfortable I become in my drumming in general. So like if I'm, at an outdoor festival and we're, slamming pretty hard and our singer comes out and she says, break it down, break it down. And I break it down in front of, we played Jazz Fest. That was about 50,000 people. And I break it down to a whisper, and I know it's funky as shit because I'm making it funky as shit. And I'm not like, oh, fuck, I don't feel comfortable playing this quiet in front of 50,000 people. It's like, no, I do feel that comfortable, but I've had to work on it for years.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's great, man. That's great. I wanted to ask you before we get out of here. But so, as I said, I was a drummer and now as a bass player. But I think I like to listen to drummers. I follow drummers probably more than anything else, and I'm so always curious about the drummer bass player relationship. And I'm just curious, what does that relationship mean to you? What do you look for in a bass player? And let's say you get on the bandstand with a bass player that you've never played with before. What kind of push and pull do you try to work on to make that happen quickly?
Yeah. So, I mean, my favorite bass players that I've played with, it feels like they are listening to you and enveloping you in a warm hug, right? And so,
well said.
So, for example, Stanton Moore project is an organ trio, and we played 4 nights at the Blue Note in New York, and we had a bunch of special guests. And one night, our special guest was Christian McBride, and Christian played electric bass, and we had so much fun. And I had not played with Christian yet. Right? We were aware of each other. Of course, I'm aware of him. But we hadn't played together yet. And it felt so comfortable right off the bat. And we're just looking and laughing at each other because it feels so good. It's like, oh my God, this is so much fun. And then the next night, we had Will Lee on bass. Now, completely different sound and feel. And, but again, we're sitting there looking at each other, laughing our asses off because it just feels so good. And both of those situations felt like a big warm hug, but one felt like a hug from this type of person. One felt like a hug from this type of person, but they were equally good hugs.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Right.
And now those guys are some of the best bass players in the world. And it felt like that. And now there are some times where it happens where you're like, all right, like, are we going to fight each other the whole time? Like, the whole time? Like, I know I don't suck because Will Lee and Christian McBride told me so. So,
that's all I would need.
Yeah, so we have fun playing together. So, I don't know why you're giving me the side eye, Right. So again, like experience really helps educate you, and to a point of where, it's like, look, I know I'm not perfect. This may not be the greatest thing in the world, but it definitely doesn't deserve that side eye.
Yeah.
Right. And then you just start to learn, and the difference between, real and bullshit. And it's like, look, I know that what I'm playing right now is not bullshit. And so if we can't get together on this, I'm trying to work with you. I'm trying to adapt to you. Can you try to adapt to me at all? And sometimes they can't.
Yeah. Well, and you've experienced with bass players, and I've experienced it with drummers. It's like there's a compromise that needs to happen there, and sometimes you play with people that just aren't willing to do it. It's really challenging.
Yeah.
It's frustrating, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Isn't that a good one? Yeah, one takeaway. I'm glad you get that one.
That's great. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to keep you any longer, man. I just can't thank you enough for the wisdom that you just deliver every time I hear you speak, and I commend you for the journey that you're still on. and just still trying to be the best version of you as in every aspect of your life that you can be. And I just really just appreciate you and everything you do, man. It's been a real pleasure.
I appreciate that, Brad. It's great to talk to you. I'm glad we could work this out. Best to you, and tell Skylar I say hello and I'm proud of him. And
yeah, sure.
And hopefully we'll cross paths again at some point.
Yeah, that sounds great. All right, Stanton. Thanks, man.
All right, man. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Bandwich Tapes. I'm your host, Brad Williams. The show's theme is called Placation and was written by Mark Mundy. Drop me a line at the email address, thebandwichtapes@gmail.com. Make sure to subscribe to receive new episodes of the podcast. And while you're at it, please tell someone else about the show. Thanks for listening.